It's NASCAR's bye week, but there are still bets to be made. We reveal our championship best bets and recap Sonoma tonight on the Backroad.
It's a non-points race, but it is a short race. Checkered flag. That's all this race
What's going on, everybody? This is the Backroad. It's In Between Media's NASCAR betting and fantasy NASCAR show. Elliot Hicks and Seth Woolcock with you. And it is the NASCAR off week. None of the big three are racing this weekend. And you're also watching this from the future. We are recording this on Monday evening, recapping Sonoma, giving you some of our best championship bets and more. Seth, how's it going tonight? Can't believe we pulled out some stuff for the off week, but I think we still are going to give the viewers a good show tonight.
Elliot, absolute pleasure being back here. A little bit different of a scene on a Monday, but vibes are still very high. And this is the point in the year we can really kind of look back, reflect a little bit on some of the bets we've made that went well, some of them that did not go well. And we're really getting the hang of this, man. Like, I think the one thing we've learned through 19 total races, including both all-star races and the Busch Light Clash as well, that there are some tracks that are favorable to bet on. The 1.5 miles, the road courses. And then there are some that we're learning to stay away from, the super speedways, the more gimmicky tracks, the Bristol Dirts of the world. So a lot of good information I think we can share tonight. Excited to talk about the futures market as well. That's something we haven't dove into in about 3 months now at this point. So I'm happy to be here, man. How are you doing tonight?
Not bad. It'll be fun to look back to. We'll look back at some of the bets that we placed earlier in the season and see how they're doing. Some pretty good, some not so good, especially after this weekend at Sonoma, which we'll take a look back at in the rear view. So we just wrapped up the first half of the season for all intents and purposes out there in wine country at Sonoma. Hopefully Rod had a good time. We'll be checking back in with him next week on the show, or I'm sure you'll be able to listen to whatever content he has out there. But anyway, Seth, we were talking before the show. It kind of reminded you of a Formula One race. No stage cautions, only 6 leaders, not a whole lot of passing. Denny Hamlin was the dominant car early, crashed out later in the race after he had lost the lead. Martin Truex Jr. gets another win. Things going better for him the last few weeks. And Kyle Busch, surprisingly, seemed to be the only car that really had anything for him. He had the lead at one point in the race as well. But, I mean, I was just as surprised to see KFB doing well. Not so surprised that Martin Truex Jr. was able to get his 4th win at Sonoma.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was one that we came in and we didn't lay a full unit on the outright, but we were on that outright. And this was one I could not believe the books. They opened it up at 40-1. We jumped on it at 28-1. And just very profitable day. But at the end of the day, this was one of those races we came in saying, like, this is the gentleman's road course. There isn't that crazy first turn like at Coda, some of this aggressive banking like you see at the Roval. It's it's a pretty elevation changing heavy course, but at the end of the day, if there is a fast car, it usually wins here at Sonoma. We've seen it time and time again. Truex Jr. happened to be that race car this weekend. A lot less tomfoolery as well. So I was happy overall, man. And let's just talk and open this discussion up about Martin Truex Jr., Elliot, because the guy has been putting on a clinic. And he's going to be a factor here down the stretch. We can talk about that later in the best bets. But what did you see from Truex this weekend? Because there were times when it got dicey during that caution, there in that restart. He had to get around quite a few cars, and he kept it clean the whole entire race.
Yeah, I mean, this race reminded me of the best of Martin Truex Jr. back in the old Furniture Road days, winning that 2017 championship. This has really proved to all of us, I think, this season, the last few weeks, that Martin Truex Jr. is not dead and gone just yet. He still has some in the tank. He's still in the best Toyotas out there. Joe Gibbs Racing, maybe not the season that they've wanted to have. Toyota hasn't quite been the way that they've wanted to be in some circumstances, but really MTJ is taking the ladder. Taking the ladder is kind of a shitty phrase. MTJ is really taking the wheel here and becoming possibly the dominant driver at JGR heading into the second half of the year.
Yeah, I think it's no doubt about it, man. He's been the most consistent. He's leading the driver points right now. Every statistical category he's competing in, and right now, like we still need to see more from Ty Gibbs. He's had good runs, but he usually isn't getting those top tens
Yeah,
like we've wanted.
he's a rookie in the next gen era, which has been possibly the hardest era to be a rookie in. There's hardly ever any practice. Some weeks we don't even get to qualify like we normally would. So for Ty Gibbs, I mean, he'll get there.
Yeah, and same with Denny Hamlin though. Denny Hamlin comes out here, he leads that first stage, ends up having to pit, has some issues down pit road, and never really recovers. I think he was 12th, and that was kind of as high as he was getting back before he ends up wrecking out. And Chris Bell, man, it's the same story, super inconsistent. And that's what we were used to seeing from Martin Truex Jr., leading a shit ton of laps and then fading at the end of the races. But he is not doing that right now. So hats off to him, man. He continues to be an anchor in all my DFS and Fantrax lineups. So we're going to continue to throw him out there as well. And I think we also need to talk about KFB. This is a guy that we weren't very high on coming into this last race. He didn't have really good statistics at Sonoma in general, specifically here at road courses in 2023 as well. But he showed up, and KFB continues to defy logic at times. And it was one of those things. Yeah, he needed that caution and the timely pit that he did, but he was able to have something for Truex at the end. So he's one that's been really hard for us to bet on. We haven't bet on him a lot this year, but maybe we need to start changing that tune a little bit, Elliot.
Yeah, before we step fully off the JGR train, also, I mean, I'll give a shout out to Denny Hamlin for the early race performance. Went out, won the pole, really dominated.
Yeah.
I was not very high on him. I think I threw him in the C tier just because, hey, I don't really have any faith in him. Stay away from him. Does well early, but hopefully you did take my advice in the end, ending up there in 36. But with Kyle Busch, dare we say Richard Childress Racing is back? I mean, this is probably the best driver that's been in one of those cars. I mean, I think even KFB with his pedigree, I mean, KFB obviously with his history and stuff is a better driver than, anybody short of Earnhardt that's been in an RCR car. But Kevin Harvick, I mean, early Kevin Harvick, maybe not even this good, definitely didn't get the results that Kyle Busch is getting in the first season here, at least later in his RCR tenure. But with KFB, it just shows again, not that any of us really thought that he was losing some steam in the tank like we thought with Truex, but it just shows, man, he's not in the dominant Chevy cars. He has some weeks where the 8 car just really isn't a factor, but he's out here leading the series in wins, running well at road courses, which, I mean, he's had road course wins, but you don't look at Kyle Busch and say he's a dominant road course guy like you do with some of these other top tier or even mid-tier drivers.
Yeah, man. And the one thing it's shining a light on for me is like, I don't know how good Austin Dillon is, because Austin Dillon's obviously driving in similar equipment to Kyle Busch. And Kyle,
the thing with Austin Dillon is obviously he got that ride because his grandfather owns the team. Has 100%. He shown to be a respectable Cup driver? Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's won marquee events. He's run well at times. He's surprised us at times. But I think this is less an indictment on Austin Dillon and more just Kyle Busch is one of the greatest fucking drivers we've ever seen in any form of motorsport.
Yeah, I think he's going to go down as an all-time great, and it's one of those things when I was
already is. He could never run another NASCAR race again. First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best we've ever seen. But as I said, he's far from done.
And I think it was one of those things that as a kid, you didn't like Kyle Busch. You thought he was cocky. And,
Dale Jr. fans, we had a reason to not like Kyle Busch. It's been 08, but coming throughout full circle, we can respect him a little bit.
Yeah, it's like the Brady goat conversation. You learn to respect goats, and that's what Kyle Busch is. So we'll have to think about that moving forward. I do want to shift over to the Ford camp here. Michael McDowell, really, really strong race for him as well. Had him in a lot of lineups. Didn't get the bets down on him early like I should have. But can we start considering this guy a road course ringer like AJ Allmendinger? He's been coming into this last race. He was top 4 in total speed rankings from iFantasy Race across all road courses since 2022. Continues to have strong performance time after time at pretty much every non-oval here. So can we put him in that conversation now, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, he was already in that conversation, not quite to the same extent as Allmendinger because the pedigree isn't there. McDowell didn't step down and run Xfinity for a few years, though, to really stack up some road course wins. But, I mean, I'm not sure how the general betting community had him going into Sonoma, but McDowell has shown his prowess on road courses, and I'm sure that Front Row knows that, and they probably focus a little more on their road course equipment to try to give him a shot to get that surprise W. Super speedways and road courses are his bread and butter. Sometimes Front Row just doesn't have the speed, doesn't necessarily have the talent either. McDowell's not a perfect driver. I mean, very few drivers are in the series. I don't want to really shit talk McDowell too much here more than I need to because he had a good run and we're talking him up. But McDowell on the road courses, I mean, we're coming in a couple of weeks here. I'm stepping ahead a little bit to the Chicago Street Course. He could be one of the favorites there just because, I mean, you can run the sims and stuff on the tracks that we know. Sonoma has had similar layouts. Watkins Glen's kind of the same. Even Coda, the layout was there on a cup car. You could throw that into iRacing.
Absolutely.
The street course is going to be a little different. I don't know if you remember the iRacing Chicago Street Course they did a couple of years ago. That was kind of a mess, I remember. A lot of these guys are going to have some very interesting times there. But all right, I digress a little bit on this point here. McDowell being a road course guy, definitely, and he's definitely going to be talked about a little more in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. That was the first time I was able to play him really all season in some lineups. So it was cool to see him come through, and someone we have to consider here because, like you said, man, he knows he doesn't have a lot of shots to win. And at one point, holding that Truex outright, the one guy I was hopefully and thankfully that he was able to get away from was McDowell, because McDowell had something towards the middle end of that race. So great day for McDowell and that number 34 team. I want to talk about William Byron because this is a guy, and I don't know if we are alone in the NASCAR betting community, but we have not had success betting this guy. It's every time the stats lead me to say this guy's going to have a great race, he goes out and does what he did this past week. Really a non-factor, hovered around, that 20th range for a long time, got a pit stop, got up into the top 5 with that break on that caution, but still finished 14th. And this is a guy I think I just need to stay away from, Elliot, because whenever the stats tell me he's not going to be good, he shows up and ends up, kind of being a hack a little bit. I know people want to give Alex Bowman that rap, but I think Alex Bowman's more of a clutch driver, if anything. But yeah, William Byron, hard to bet on. And I think now we can have the conversation as well with Kyle Larson. Is he a clutch driver? I'm not so sure because really screwed up on the qualifying. He had the car to beat in practice, didn't go out and lay a good first time in qualifying. When he had to lay that second lap, didn't get it done either, was kind of nursing those tires. So 2 conversations, 1 Hendrick camp here, Elliot.
Yeah, and I think this kind of bundles together a whole opinion on Hendrick that I've formed here in the last couple of minutes, is that Hendrick has been pretty streaky, honestly, at times. I mean, you have years where Kyle Larson wins 10 races and wins the title after a year sitting out of the Cup Series. You have William Byron win 3 races early in the year and then kind of run pretty crummy. I mean, he and Bowman are definitely comparable. I do think Byron's more of a clutch driver. We've seen Bowman take the reins in sort of a closer kind of way like Kevin Harvick has when the opportunity presents itself. Byron has been more consistently a go out there, dominate a race, get the win, or get a good finish type of deal. But, they're all, when you look at them, they're all kind of streaky drivers. I mean, Kyle Larson, again, another one of those guys who's the best in the world. But you can tell sometimes even he struggles with some confidence in there. And, we talk about that a lot with guys like Bubba Wallace or some of the other guys that run more mid-pack. But, I mean, Larson can go out there and run well and still be like, man, we really should have run better, that sort of deal. And, I mean, with the Hendrick cars, obviously talented drivers. There's weeks where they can go out there and run 1, 2, 3, 4, which we've seen. There's weeks where they can go out and kind of get burned on pit strategy and you come out with a sour taste in your mouth. Obviously Hendrick's going to be dominant. Obviously, we're still going to have Larson and Byron as the favorites most weeks. They're still going to win a lot of races. One of the Hendrick cars ending up with the championship trophy in their hands will be no surprise. But at times, they've shown themselves to be streakier than we think they are as the dominant Chevy team.
Yeah, we're not getting great numbers now. That's the thing. Yeah. After those first couple wins, I think we hit Larson maybe at 10-1, something similar at Martinsville. And then after that, we really haven't got good numbers on him. And it's one of those things, I feel like if we keep betting him for outrights, we're going to continue to lose a little bit of money. I was very hesitant to do it this last week because I didn't think he had that late run speed at Sonoma in 2022. However, Rod kind of talked me into it. I put him on my card and I regretted it. So that's something to keep in mind too. Like, we got to be, we have to take our shots on the Hendrick camp because they're going to win more races this season, but we have to really be picky when we do and see when the value's there, especially early in the week, like we normally bet on Thursdays. So,
right. Cause I mean, everybody and their mother thought Kyle Larson was just going to run away with this race. We talked about it on the show last week. That's like, this is Larson's race and we'll be surprised if it goes any other way. Qualified awful, didn't run up front as much as we thought he would and ended up with a finish that he didn't really want, as well as the other guys in the Hendrick camp. Chase Elliott was around the front for a little bit also didn't get the win. We saw Toyota Truex get the win a year after they ran worse than we were running parallel with the Rick Ware cars last year at Sonoma.
Yeah. So interesting overall from the top of the board. I want to talk about a couple guys kind of in the middle of the pack and then lower on. Want to start out, just shout out to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. This guy is coming to play. We have to be considering him in all DFS, all fantasy lineups moving forward. The guy is not a road course driver. Terrible. I think his best finish there was at 18th or 19th coming into Sonoma.
Yeah, there were not the numbers to show that he would run well at Sonoma.
And then finishes 12th. Like he's been very good. If you can find him in some groups and some matchups, I know we talked about a group bet last week that got canceled because of Gragson was not in there, but that would have been a home run on Ricky Stenhouse. So in those matchups, in that betting group market, let's continue to think about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Like, throw his PRs out the window until this year. He is setting more PRs this year than he's ever has before. He's been great. Any thoughts on the number 47, Elliot? It's been just a stellar season for JGR.
Yeah, I mean, you can really see what attracted him to Roush Fenway Racing early on, going out there winning Nationwide Series championships at the time, getting the opportunity for them in the Cup Series, winning a couple restrictor plate races. It's easy to forget that guys like him have talent. The guys at the very back of the field are still some of the most talented drivers out there. We've seen when guys like Bowman or Chastain get chances in good equipment, they become, multi-time series winners and guys who are fighting for titles. Is Stenhouse going to get that chance again? I don't know. But it's really great that he's in a situation with JTG Doherty. Don't forget, they're a team that has flirted with the idea of completely shutting down at times. They've reduced their footprint to just this one car. They've thought about even selling off that charter just to make the money.
Yeah.
This year, Stenhouse has run well enough. I mean, they have, obviously, I'm sure they're going to keep going. I haven't heard any of those rumors. Obviously, you win a Daytona 500, you're probably not going to shut down anytime soon. At least, hopefully not. But I mean, I'm really happy for Stenhouse. We've taken our turns talking crap on him, calling him Wrecky Spinhouse, all that sort of stuff. I'm sure he's going to continue to have those moments because every driver has those moments, and he's got to be aggressive on those sorts of opportunities where he becomes Wrecky Spinhouse because he's trying to win a race because he's not going to have opportunities to win that much. This year, I still don't really think he pulls out a win unless it's at a super speedway, but it is nice to see the team running well. And maybe they won't be a pushover in the playoffs. Austin Dillon a couple years ago, we thought he was going to be a complete pushover in the playoffs.
Yep.
I forget if he advanced to the round of 12, but he ran really well in that round. And whether he advanced or not, still surprised a lot of people. Second place at Darlington a couple of years back in the playoffs. We could see a surprise run like that from Stenhouse.
Yeah, he's already got 5 playoff points right now. And the one thing I think we have to put away is the fact that these aggressive drivers don't always finish races, because Ross Chastain right now, second in laps run so far this season. He's the most aggressive driver. Ricky Stenhouse, 7th in laps run this season. These guys who are aggressive, it doesn't always mean they're not going to finish races, and they're defying that a little bit. So cool to kind of see that, especially these first couple years of making NASCAR content. Stenhouse was someone was always easy to shit on. So congratulations to him. But I think we need to turn our attention to some negatives here, man. And it's Austin Cindric. Is this guy was he not ready for Cup? Because when he came up in that, I believe it was a 2020 season, and he started to have those, just occasional, he'd run a road course, he'd run Talladega. He looked really good at times, but then he comes up, excuse me, I think that was 2021. And then he comes up in 2022 and wins the first race. He was ever a full-time driver at that Daytona 500 back in 2022. And since then, he's flirted with some top 10s, been a good road course driver. But this week, he was completely outmatched at a place that people thought he was going to run good. And I'm tired of putting any stock into Austin Cindric. He's been terrible, Elliot.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough with him. I just talked about it with Ty Gibbs. Cindric's not a rookie anymore, but it is the hardest time to be a young driver trying to acclimate to the Cup cars. You're running a car that most people don't know a whole lot about and are still learning about. That makes it easier in some essences, how you can go out there and win the Daytona 500, run well when you can. But at this point with Cindric, I would have to agree with you. The Penske cars are not running quite to the dominance that they want to be, but they're running well enough that Cindric should not be running quite as bad as they should be. I mean, Penske was in a tough situation. The ride was going to go to Cindric whenever the next one opened, and it was likely to be Keselowski. And I think Keselowski blindsided some of Penske. He wanted to eventually transition into ownership. Roger Penske told him to fuck off. And then he goes into Roush Fenway and now becomes Roush Fenway Keselowski. He's building that team up. So they may have put Cindric in that car a little early, but I mean, it's not like Cindric was running poorly in Xfinity. They were running well with only 2 Fords in the whole field. They were wiping the field oftentimes in Xfinity. He got the championship there. He was no slouch, but I'm really surprised that he still hasn't been trying to put it together. He hasn't been able to put it together yet in, theoretically the flagship Penske car.
Yeah, and it's just the finishes, man. Average finish of 21.9. That is worse than Todd Gilliland. That is worse than AJ Allmendinger. Todd Gilliland's run the fucking 51 car how many races this season? Worse than Corey LaJoie. Worse than Ty Gibbs. there's just some question marks there. So he's
Right.
someone.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He's not getting pushed out of that ride anytime soon. It's not that he's run poorly enough to get replaced. There's really not a lot of prospects in the Ford camp that are going to come up. And he's got family ties with Penske as well, with Tim Cindric being heavily involved there with Roger Penske. So it's all, we could be looking down the line here as Austin Cindric is just Austin Dillon 2.0, which, I don't want to throw that on him. And again, I talked about Austin Dillon has done respectable things in the Cup Series, but we don't know if he's going to quite reach the potential that we thought Austin Cindric would have.
And I think bottom line here, as it comes to NASCAR gambling and fantasy lineups, Cindric cannot touch your lineups or your cards moving forward.
Completely.
A couple weeks ago, I tried to get trendy with him. I tried to bet him in a match against Eric Jones. He fucked us. Yeah. A couple weeks ago, again, I think maybe it's probably going back 8 weeks ago. I tried to throw him in some DraftKings lineup. He fucked us. Like this guy, JJ Yaley, is still averaging more DraftKings points per game. So that's where we're at right now with Austin Cindric. Act accordingly. Fade this car continually. Want to round it out here. Just kind of go through our betting card. We missed out on the qualifying bets. William Byron, Kyle Larson didn't come through for us. Kyle Larson top 3, no go. William Byron top 10, no go. Thankfully, we did hit that outright on Truex 28-1 and a top 10 on him at plus 120. But the one thing I'll say about that, Elliot, we left money on the board. Money on the board. I liked him enough that I should have put down. I think people were getting a 10-1 top 3 on him. I think a 7-1 top 5 on him. So there was some more money out there that we did not strike on. So I think when we're
hindsight is 2020 though. I mean, we can go and beat ourselves up every week for, hey, we had all these great odds on this guy and we didn't hit him. The numbers were there for Truex. I think he was he your first pick off the board in the tier A's, I think. We'd have to go back, but I know we had him.
He was I think it was your first pick, actually. I think he was number 2 off the board. So we were really high on Truex, but that's the one thing. I need to stick to my guns more. I was high on him. Take him more in some matchups, some other things like that. Because I tried throwing out like Ryan Blaney again in a matchup. Worked last week, didn't work this week. Joey Logano ended up beating him there. Ross Chastain came through for us. So top 10, glad to see that. And the one thing that I liked it when Rod threw it out there, we added to the card because I liked it a lot, was the winner of stage 2 wins race. However, the one thing we have to keep in mind without these stage breaks at these road courses, the pit sequences get off. Truex didn't win any of those stages until the third one. So that's the one thing we have to keep in mind as well. So overall, pretty disappointing card, but we hit the 28-1 outright. So we made some money this week. So I think we can go ahead. We can move forward with a smile on our faces. And we learned a lesson this week, I think, Elliot.
Right. Any week that you hit the outright's a happy week. Even if you only put a little sprinkling on them and you miss everything else. Hey, you picked the right winner of the race, at least in one facet. And we talked about, picking the winner of stage 1, winner of stage 2. Those tempt us every week. They tempt me every week because sometimes you see those sweeps. You see that dominant car. And that's another situation where it's like, damn, you're leaving money on the table if you see a stage 2 winner end up winning the race, or see a stage 1 winner come back and rebound from some sort of issue and win the race. But, they're some of the toughest bets to get on. Plus 225 is a good number for something like that because it's tough and it doesn't happen that often. So the books are learning. When we first started the show a couple of years ago, I would openly question whether the books actually watch NASCAR races. It is safe to say that the books watch NASCAR now. Very safe to say that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So great run at Sonoma, man. I can't wait for what is our next road course, the street race, actually. Is that where we head to next?
So we've got the off week and then we go to Nashville. So that should be a bit more normal. And then it's the street course.
Man, I am excited. Like, I know I said I wanted to stay away from some of these gimmicky ones, but that street race is going to be a fun one to have something on. And Nashville, too.
And it'll be just as gimmicky as Bristol Dirt, and generally would caution against a lot of bets there. But, hey, we're going to throw down some fun ones, aren't we?
Yes, sir. Yeah. And let's do it now, man. Why don't we jump ahead? Let's look at that future betting market here. We got championship odds, and I think that's the best place to jump in here. So let's do it in a little parking garage props.
Let's go. Alrighty, so Seth, like you said, we're going to talk about some championship odds and also look back at some bets that we made early in the year and see how they're looking now. Where do you want to start off, bud?
Yeah, let's start at the season win totals that we tackled early in the season. I think this is our second episode of 2023. And we've already lost one of three that we threw out on, and that was the Martin Truex Jr. under 1.5. We faded him coming in, man. He was
Yeah.
god awful last season. Didn't really have that many top fives even a season ago, but he's looked like a completely different driver. And I think the one thing our good friend Rod pointed out last week was when things are good at home, when things are good in your personal life, often that translates to the field and the track here in this instance.
That is very true, and that's a storyline that's going around a lot, and I do believe it for sure. But to also steer away from that and look back, last year, it's not that Truex ran like crap every single week. There were a number of occasions where he was a dominant car in the race, top three out front, had chances to win, had chances to run second, and just got screwed by things at the end. Something would break in the car, some caution would fall, and he would lose on the pit strategy. If you look back at it, Truex did not have his best season, but he didn't have his worst season. I mean, that's easy to say. He ran with crummy cars early in his career. But we could have seen this coming had we really dug deep enough. It was a very easy, very trendy take to say that Truex is done. He's mulling retirement. We don't think he has it in him anymore. But going and looking at the underlying numbers, we could have seen this coming. Granted, I probably would have agreed with you, even though I was higher with him around clash time. I was higher on him than you were. Under 1.5 wins would have made sense for me for Truex. And good on him for wiping that out in the first half of the season.
Well, and shout out to that whole team, James Small and the whole gang up there on the pit box. They're doing great work. And this was a car that I think it was only probably about 6 to 7 weeks ago, maybe, that we saw that blow up. Like Truex blew up on them because they didn't tell him that he was on old tires going on to that restart here in one of those races early on that he could have won. And I was full sell on the 19 once again. But man, they have proved us wrong. So if there's a bet I was glad to hit, or glad to lose, it was, a negative money bet on a 28-1 outright. So I'm happy, that one did not hit. The other two that we still have alive here, let's start with Tyler Reddick, over 1.5 wins here on his new team, 23XI Racing. How do you feel about that, Elliot? We have about a little over half a season left. We head to the NBC Sports crew. We can say goodbye to Clint Boyer and the gang up there. Do you think Reddick can pull out one more win? We have a handful of road courses left as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best shot is at the road courses here. I mean, does he get it at the zany street course in Chicago? Maybe not. But I think that Reddick, there's still enough time left in the year. He's all but locked into the playoffs. I think he's running well enough that even if, God forbid, we get a 17th winner, I don't even know if that's mathematically possible. I think it might be. But, I mean, he's pretty much locked into the playoffs. He'll get another win. He won 3 times last year for RCR, right? Same as the 8 cars won this year. So it would really surprise me if he doesn't hit the over on that.
I agree. We'll cross our fingers. Same odds here, minus 155. We took Bubba Wallace over 0.5 wins. And this is one that the last 2 weeks, Bubba hasn't looked great. But before that, the guy was on a top 5 streak. He was looking really, really good. So I'm not worried about this. This is one that I think probably comes. It might come. He probably doesn't make the playoffs again. He probably is left out, looking in. But I think he can win at Kansas too. I think he can win at possibly New Hampshire. Some of these shorter flat tracks, I think, is Bubba's specialty, or Dega. I think Dega is also in the cards, or that when we return to Daytona here in the fall as well.
Yeah, I mean, you best believe he's going to go hard in the summer stretch here to make it into the playoffs. The team's run well enough. The guys deserve it. He already has his teammate Reddick locked in. But yeah, Bubba Wallace, I think that he hits this. And like we said, whether it's to make the playoffs or whether it's in the playoffs already eliminated like he's done the last 2 years, getting a win, pulling one out of his ass at Homestead or something. Yeah. I think Bubba Wallace is going to end up in victory lane. It just depends on whether it comes at a beneficial enough time to have him chase for a championship.
Yeah. Either way, we'll be happy. We'll cash that ticket. So those are the tickets we're holding on to out there. Guys, cross your fingers for us. Can we get a Tyler Reddick and a Bubba Wallace win here down the stretch?
23-11. Here we go.
Yes, let's go. Elliot, let's go ahead. Let's move to the championship odds. We're going to throw up a tracker here that I found. A really cool tracker. Can't honestly even remember the website here, but this kind of
looks like this is from sportsbettingdime.com.
Okay, sportsbettingdime.com. Appreciate you guys. So this tracks the series odds for the Cup Series Championship. And right now, as you can kind of tell, Martin Truex Jr., he's been the big mover. He's fallen to almost 19-1, and now he's all the way down. They haven't listed 8-1 here. I have it 9-1. But what are your takeaways looking at this here, Elliot?
Sorry about that. I figured we'd zoom it in, give the viewers a little bit of a better look at this here. Yeah, so this is our top 5 in odds. You do see with Truex there, you get that big spike there, all the way up to almost plus 2,000. He is the darker red line here, again, that goes up to plus 2,000. I mean, these are the favorites for the championship. 4 of these 5 being in the championship 4 is honestly an expectation at this point. Larson being the favorite doesn't surprise me. We got Chase Elliott up there. These guys all run well. They're all, I don't really see anything here that surprises me a whole lot. Start of the season, KFB a little higher than most, and the Hendrick guys, the favorites, makes sense. Look at Kyle Busch, almost a little bit of a yo-yo there. We saw Chase kind of rise a little bit when he was out, and now he's running well again, comes down. It's really neat to see this stuff visualized this way as you go throughout the season. Oh, yeah, even at the start here, we go all the way back to December. So this is months before the Clash when you just have these rides get locked in where these numbers start.
Yeah, and I think the thing here is when I'm looking at this top 5, I'm not betting William Byron because I'm worried he usually has that late season stint where, in the summer, him and Alex Bowman both terrible, usually in the months of June and July and August. So I'm afraid that this number is going to grow. I'm not betting on him there. And I'm also I need to see more from Chase Elliott. I don't think if Chase Elliott wins a race that his odds are going to drop that dramatically right now. Right. So I'm wary of those two. If you want to take a shot at KFB and Kyle Busch at this point, or Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, you can. I'm not against it. Obviously, we know these guys have a lot of success with these tracks in the playoffs, and that's what I think is leading a lot of people to that. William Byron, the one thing I think we have to keep in mind, though, fastest car at Phoenix, pulled that one out of his ass as well. So if he does make it to the Final Four, potentially some goodness. Ellie, can you expand this to the top 10 and see what we're working with there?
Yeah, as we move to the top 10, I'll give some more Hendrick takes. With William Byron, if he does have that summer slump, the odds for a championship will rise a little bit and give you a bit of a better number. Maybe you should consider taking it then, because even though Hendrick has summer slumps and they're streaky, the playoffs, they're usually on it. They usually have 1 or 2 guys in that championship 4. And the Chase Elliott, I'm almost kind of fading him a little more too. But believe me, I do not believe that NASCAR and Hendrick Motorsports will have the most popular driver in one of its best cars out of the playoffs. But it is a very real possibility that without a win, he doesn't make it. He's going to need a win from all the races that he missed. And we just said Hendrick's been streaky. We haven't seen what we wanted from Chase Elliott. Is he going to get back there before the playoffs? We've only got, I think it's only 10 or 12 more races before the playoffs. Time is running out. Is he going to be able to get that win and even make the playoffs? Or is one of the most popular championship bets going to be wiped out with 10 races to go in the year?
When I think where you're looking at Chase Elliott, where you could maybe get in, could he do something on that Chicago street course? Possibly. I think you can look at him up in Pocono as well. He's been run good at Pocono up in our home turf. So maybe we see something from him there. Michigan, he's run good. And then we have Indy Motor Speedway.
The Indy road course. I mean, that's the thing is,
and the Glen. It's going to be probably one of those. Would you say one of those road courses or Michigan?
That's his best shot, but we haven't seen Chase be the dominant road course guy that he was in 2020, 2021 back when he was first ripping off those wins. So, I mean, I think that he's good enough. I think the cars are good enough. I think the tracks are favorable enough that he's going to get in and make the playoffs. I'm just saying, very real possibility that the most popular driver misses the playoffs for the first time in quite some time.
Yeah.
Even Dale Jr. missed the playoffs in some years. It could happen to Chase.
I'm not making a bet on Chase right now. Those odds when he's not even locked in. That bet could be a red X by the time September 1st rolls around. He's on the playoffs. So good point out there. Looking at the top 10 here, Elliot, is there anyone else that you could consider? I can't bet Denny Hamlin. I can't bet Chris Bell. They're too streaky. I could see Bell May making a run like he did at the Final Four last year. Logano, terrible speed ranking lately, but we know what he can do in the playoffs. Yeah. Blaney hit or miss. And then you got old Ross, just kind of been steady Eddie all season long. I'm worried about all these guys.
Right. And I think that's a very clear difference here from the top 4 or 5 into the top 10 here. I want to see who this is that went up big time. Oh, which line is that?
I think it was Truex.
That is the Truex at plus 1900 there back in April. Okay. So when he was kind of slowing down there around the time that he had the blow up with James Small and we're like, oh my God, Truex is really blowing up here. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, I generally agree with all your points. Denny Hamlin is risky, and he's the guy who notoriously has never been able to cross that championship line, despite having some of the best pedigree, most wins in the series among active drivers. Chris Bell, we know he can do it. He can make the run to the Final Four. He can hit those streaks, but he needed to win. He needed to win it in 2 rounds in a row.
Yeah.
They were on fire at the right time. But in terms of the consistency to win a championship, I just haven't seen it from him. But then again, who needs consistency when you have 3 races, and then the one, and you just have to win one of those 3? Logano, he's got the pedigree. I'll never count out Joey Logano, regardless of what Penske's doing. Blaney, he got the monkey off his back with the win streak at the Coke 600. Maybe this is his year he makes a run. And Chastain, we already know he'll do anything and everything to get in that championship for. So even though the wall ride move is blocked and penalized this year, wouldn't surprise me to see him make a run. But again, from Trackhouse and from Chastain, just hasn't been quite the same dominance that we saw last year. Even though both of his wins were early in the season, Chastain was thought of as, hey, he's running up front. He's a championship contender, or at least a championship outsider most of the way through.
Yeah, and really, like, all those third-party teams, we haven't really seen, like what we saw Keselowski almost win in Atlanta. We saw Chastain run early good in the season, but like outside of those guys, like none of those non-big 3 teams. I mean, JTG obviously gets that win in Daytona, but outside of him, like Trackhouse has not been as dominant. Obviously 23XI, they got that one win, but it's just hard to trust these other teams outside of Gibbs, outside of Penske, outside of Hendricks Motorsports right now.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at it at the end of the day, you look back at championship history, it's a Penske guy, or it's a Gibbs guy, or it's a Hendrick guy. It'd be a major upset if it wasn't one of those 3 teams holding up that big trophy at the end of the year in Phoenix, at least the way it is now. Playoffs might change a little bit. We think that the championship is going to be in Phoenix next year, and then maybe it changes. If you throw in a little more chaos, we have some chaos in the rounds, but Phoenix generally is a relatively predictable race outside of what happens with those championship 4. If it's mixed up a little bit, maybe in the coming years, but that's getting a little too far into the future. In my episode, I've had the whole tinfoil hat and let's get way out here. Talking about futures, I start to talk about way future. But in terms of these futures, that's still what I believe. It's going to be one of these big 3 teams to take home the title. But that doesn't mean you can have a Chastain or you can have a Stenhouse make a run into the round of 8 somehow or something to be able to make a little bit of, we were just talking before the show. Hopefully they put out some bets, X driver qualifies for round of 12 or qualifies for round of 8. We'll break those down more before the playoffs if they show up, because those will be some real interesting ones to take. And you can have entirely different opinions. Am I certain my guy Bowman will make it through the round of 16 if he makes the playoffs? Probably. Am I certain he makes the round of 12? Probably not. So things change round by round as you go through these playoffs, just the same as any other sport with playoffs.
Yeah, Elliot, before I lock in my my favorite, the one person I'm going to be getting down on this week for in this futures market, if I just had to say to you, 2-part question. A, is there anyone at their current odds you were interested in? And B, well, I guess let's switch this off. That is the B question. The A question is, who's your championship 4 right now if you had to pick them?
Championship 4 right now, I mean, we'll go Larson, KFB, Byron, and then we'll say Hamlin is sort of a wild card. You can make arguments for any of these guys in the top 10, or really 12 of the 16 guys who make the playoffs. You can make the argument here. Do we still want to look at the chart here or scroll down to some of the more general
go ahead,
odds?
scroll down. Yeah.
Move down here. At these odds here, it says Caesars up here. We believe these are either older or from DraftKings. It says DraftKings down here at the bottom if I scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the Caesars odds we were seeing just before the show are a little different. But you got Larson plus 500. I don't know about that number. KFB plus 600. You've got some interesting ones here. I mean, Denny at plus 1,000 is tempting, but, again, the sort
he
of
can't win a championship. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So
Harvick at plus 1,600. I mean, just because I think Stuart Haas will just essentially throw the other 3 cars in the garbage and say, we are going to throw everything we can at Kevin Harvick here. And he's got the pedigree, maybe as an outsider. Plus 1,600, maybe a little too low of a number. We need something a little crazier. If it was Harvick at like 2,500, that's a bet I'm way more interested in.
Yeah. All those long shots, I just don't feel comfortable enough. Like even Brad 25-1 hasn't locked himself in yet.
I'm not comfortable with Brad at that number. I'm not even comfortable with Bowman at that number.
Reddick.
Yeah. And if you scroll down a little bit more here, they only give a couple other drivers. I mean, really anywhere below Bowman and maybe even anywhere below Harvick or Reddick, there's really no shot any of these guys are winning the title. I mean, it would take a real freaking feat of nature for anybody outside of, those top 6 or 7 guys on the board we were just looking at to take home a title.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's why I do see some value on this board. Is there anyone you're laying coin down, Elliot? Because there's really only one person that I am excited about. Harvick at 1,600 isn't that, but now that you do throw that out there, like you could get a worse number on Harvick, and he's been pretty good at this these round of 8 tracks. He could sneak in.
Yeah. I mean, if that Harvick number bumps up, it's something to watch. If the Logano or Blaney were a little different than 1,100, I mean, Truex plus 800 with how he's running, it wouldn't surprise me if he rips off a title and says, "All right, won a second title. I'm good. You guys do what you want. I got a championship. I got a new life here. I'm rolling. Let's go."
So Elliot, you took the words right from my mouth. I am locking in plus 900 over on Caesars, Martin Truex Jr. to win the championship. He lost me some money in my season win total under on him, but he won us some money this last week. And I even said coming into this last week, Elliot, no driver has made in between media the back road more money this season than Martin Truex Jr. So we're going to take some of the house money he gave us and we're going to throw it on here to win the championship. And what do we like about Truex Jr.? Not only is he leading the driver standings and DraftKings in points scored this season, he's tied for second with top 5s with 5 of them, 5th with top 10s and with 8 of them, 5th in laps run. This guy's finishing race. That'll be huge in the playoffs. We're not seeing someone who's being inconsistent because inconsistency is what kills you in these playoffs, Elliot. You have to become a Christopher Bell and win your way in. Mm-hmm. He already has 11 playoff points, the 4th most, so he should have a cushion in that first round. And he's been second in total speed rankings at all tracks year to date heading into Sonoma, courtesy of iFantasy Race. So I imagine he's probably closing on Byron because he looked like the fastest car this last weekend. So I kind of want to go round by round in the playoffs here, but is there anything that concerns you that I'm not looking at with this Truex bet before we kind of go round by round and break it down?
Not at all. If anything concerned me, I wouldn't have thrown him out there as my popular pick. I mean, he's getting hot at the right time. And even though we're still a long way from the playoffs, guys that run well in the summer, oftentimes will carry that to the fall. And even though you just have to get into the postseason and then whatever happens, happens. But, Truex is definitely a trendy pick. And the odds, as I said, these are DraftKings odds. The Caesars odds are a little more interesting. You've got your top 6 or 7, Larson, Busch, Byron, Chase, Denny, Truex, all under plus 1,000. Then you have a couple of guys, your Penske's, your Bells, your Chastains, Harvick, Keselowski, all about plus 1,800. Then there's a big gap, and you have Bowman at plus 3,000. Another big gap, Ty Gibbs at 4,500, which I think is only because he's in a Gibbs car, and probably Bowman only because he's in a Hendrick car. And then another big gap to plus 7,500. So the books, like I said, the books are watching NASCAR now. They really have an idea, and they have the same feeling that we do, that it's going to be one of the top, 8, 9 drivers on the board, maybe even the top 12 if you want to get a little freaky and extend it a little bit, that are going to take home this title. And as much as we want to root for the underdog, again, you look at the list of champions, very rarely does the underdog come out on top.
Yeah, and I think that's why Truex makes so much sense at this number of 9-1 right now.
Yeah.
Let's chat about this.
If he comes in with 2 more wins into the playoffs and, the top seed or the second seed, if JGR avoids getting a penalty for something with this next-gen car that we've seen already 3 times with Hendrick and with Stewart Haas, if they can avoid a penalty, keep all those playoff points, that'll start him off on the right foot to begin with.
Well, and who had the number 1 speed ranking at Nashville last year, coming right off this. Want to take a guess?
MTJ? Did he?
It was MTJ. Yeah. So he's going to be a threat here down in the great state of Tennessee. Go Vols, baby. Go Vols. So yeah, like what I like in the playoffs here is when he gets there, first race is going to be Darlington in those playoffs. He ran up front, led a bunch of laps at Darlington, had a bad finish, was one of his worst finishes of the season, but he got wrecked out.
That was one of those ones where he ran up front and he had a chance to win that race and just couldn't make it happen.
Kansas comes back to next week, led a bunch of laps there, second in total speed ranking. And then
Toyota ran great there. I mean, Bubba Wallace kind of wiped the field there at the end.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about this first round. It rounds out with Bristol, which is a question mark. We don't have any Bristol data because we have a fucking dirt race there for some reason. But that first round.
Bristol dirt is fun, but I do hope they go back to the asphalt there, both races. Throw the dirt somewhere else. But yeah, first round, definitely attractive for Truex. Go on to the round of 12.
Yeah. Round of 12 here. Texas, another question mark. That is a question mark there. Dega, he has not been good on super speedway. So that is this is where it gets a little bit hairy. He's this round of 12 here.
Are we still that Truex has never won a super speedway race? Did he finally get a win or not yet?
I don't know if he has. The races he's been very bad in speed ranking though this year has been those super speedways.
Mm-hmm. And this very well could be a round where if he's got a points cushion and if he advances, that you see him, try to get the win at Texas, but then kind of lay back and avoid the chaos at Dega and the Roval. So come back to this in October when they run those races. I think that'll be the strategy for MTJ. Obviously locked into the playoffs now with 2 wins.
Yeah, Roval, 2 top 10s there in 5 races, so I think he can be okay. But it gets fun here in the round of 8. This is where I think if he gets in the round of 8, he's a lock for that final 4 here. Vegas, top 4 in total speed ranking. Vegas finished 7th. Homestead, we have not seen Homestead this season, Elliot, but we have seen Darlington, the closest comp, was 2nd there in total speed ranking at Darlington, led a shit ton of laps. We just talked about it. And then also finished 6th last year and led laps here at Homestead. And then we're going to go to Martinsville. That's going to be that deciding race. I don't think we're going to need a Hail Melon this year from Martin Truex Jr. because he was 3rd here already this season. So I think like Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, that lines up for this guy to punch his ticket to Phoenix. So at plus 900, I really think you're automatic. Like, I don't say automatically because it's racing. Anything can happen. But at plus 900, I think that is a good shot that you're going to get that ticket into the Final Four. And if you have a championship ticket on Martin Truex Jr. in the Final Four at plus 900, you're going to be very happy. But the one question mark is Phoenix here, Elliot. Can he get it done at Phoenix? We've seen him be great at the Clash. He won the Clash. Martinsville, tight corner. Sonoma, once again, these tight braking, tight turning ones, he's great at. However, just wasn't good at Phoenix. But he was great at the comp tracks. Richmond led 56 laps there. Top 4 speed. Gateway, 5th place finish. So those are the closest 2 comps, and he's been great at the comps, but he was terrible at Phoenix. So that's the one thing. That's the one thing that can make you nervous here is how well can he run at Phoenix?
Yeah, but I mean, if he gets to Phoenix, especially if he's the only JGR car there, they're really going to throw all their efforts into that car. He definitely can do it. I mean, when he won his championship in 2017, it was at Homestead. It was not at Phoenix. That's kind of why I don't really like Phoenix as the championship track because it's almost too niche. I kind of want it to be a little more general. Like the perfect place to throw the championship would be like the Charlotte Oval. If you were to, I don't want to ditch the Roval. I like the Roval. You're not ditching the Coke 600. A place like that where you're going to get good racing. You're not going to have necessarily a super niche, guys run well at these short tracks and that's it. Have something where you have a lot of sample size. Homestead was a great track for so long, and that's why it stayed there for so long. I like switching it up. I also like switching it up again in a couple of years. But yeah, Phoenix being the question mark, I agree with. I think he will be a favorite. I think plus 900 is a good number, and I like the analysis we just did. I think you talked me into it here. 19 car being our championship favorite, at least at that number. I'm cool with.
Let's lock it in, man. Let's lock it in. I'm going to put an article about it later on Betting Pros this week, so you guys can check that out if you want some more analysis on MTJ. But yeah, man, I'm really excited for this second half of the season, Elliot. Is there one race you're looking forward to more than anything? One thing that you can kind of horizon forecast this for us that you're looking forward to as we head towards the backstretch of what's been an exciting and thrilling and profitable NASCAR season so far?
Yeah, I mean, both racing-wise and entertainment value-wise, it'll be great. The Chicago Street Course is going to be wild. Pocono, we're going to be there in person covering it for you, get some extra content on in-between media for you there. I feel like whenever NBC takes the broadcast, it starts to get more serious. Fox, they have fun with it. Mike Joy's great. Clint Boyer has his fun. It's early in the season. Anything can happen. When you get to NBC, it's all right. It's a summertime here. We're in the summer stretch. The playoffs are right around the corner. Everything just starts to feel a little more serious with me when the NBC broadcast starts up. I don't know if it's, personal bias, liking that crew a little more, the fact that they put on a bit more of a serious production. Maybe, maybe it's just ingrained in me that NBC, they got the Sunday Night Football. We've seen Super Bowls there, Kentucky Derby is there. They got the prestigious stuff. Maybe that's why I like their production a little better in the second half. But in any case, it is going to be a fun second half of the year. And grateful for all of you that tuned into the bonus Backroad here. There's not anything to bet this weekend. So, we're not giving you specific betting odds for a race because there is none. But, hopefully you found this championship betting insightful. And it was nice to take a pretty extensive look back at the last race. Oftentimes we don't really get a chance to do that. And it's well warranted because you're here for the bets for the current race. You're not here for the bets from last race. Yeah. But it is kind of nice sometimes to really fully break down a lot of different guys because normally we take about 5 minutes and then we're like, all right, let's get into next week. So that was something else kind of cool that it'll be neat to give it another try at some point.
Yeah, man. And like you said, Elliot, I am so thankful for this IBT family, man. They make this so much fun. It was a little weird, tonight we're not doing it live, so we don't have the live comments coming in.
Mhm.
But I know we've seen the comments out there that people look forward to watching this every single week, and the fact that it's two Stooges here that we've been friends for a long time, and our brilliant third member Rod as well here on occasion, that they enjoy tuning in, man, and that just means the world to us. So if you guys are out there, if you're new to this episode and you haven't been tuning in, hit that subscribe button, come back, hang out with Ellie and I again. We also have some PGA content that we're hitting winners over there as well, and fantasy football season, NFL betting season coming into form. So I'm so excited for everything to come in. Elliot, I can't thank you enough for steering this ship down the back road.
Hey, it's always a fun ride down the back road with you, Seth. Thanks again for watching, and we will be back in a week's time, live again, same time as normal on Thursdays for a nice race at the Nashville Superspeedway. We'll see you then.